home manufacture and worldwide trade. Now, we're based here today at a university, and I'm looking out into the audience, and I realise that probably not many of you have a home. You're living in digs, or is it tents at this university? I can't remember. But I do, feel for you being in this situation without a home. So I'm not going to rub in the home part of the talk in too much. Essentially, this is cottage industry. It's the things that you can make in your bedroom. Yes, when you're at university, and when you plug in your laptop and you download a free CAD program, and maybe you spend £200 on a 3D printer, or you use a 3D printing service online. It's the things that you can make to realize your dreams or someone else's dream. Now, people are obsessed with business. I want you to put your hand up if you've ever thought about setting up a business in the future. Okay, thank you. Now, for those who can't see the audience, that's well over half of you have thought about setting up a business in the future. Well, what is a business? I'm just going to give you a very quick illustration of what a business is. So Sam and Sally decide to set up a business because they just had their first child, and they realized that the cups that you put the water or the milk in for the child all leak. And they think, well, how hard is it for us to design a product that just doesn't leak? And there must be a market need for this. So they design it, and they devise the way of marketing it, and they perhaps mortgage the house, or they use their savings, or perhaps they go to the bank and they get a loan, because they need to pay for tooling, and they need to pay for sales, shipping. In order to get their product to market, they need to pay for patent attorneys so that no one nicks the idea. They need to pay for software. And so the reality of businesses is that when you start a business, and think of this picture here of the wreck at the bottom of the sea. Don't need to think of your future business as a wreck necessarily. It's something that we want to get off the ground, isn't it? The ground at the bottom of the sea. And what not many of us realize, that when we invest in a business, that's not something positive. The more money we plow into a business at the start, the further underwater our ship is. And 4 out of 5 businesses, startup businesses, fail. And the reason for it is that they start with loans. And perhaps they fail to realize that their business begins underwater. Now, you can see there that there's a diver, and this is your customer coming into your business. Or it's every time a product is sold. And the diver goes down to the bottom of the ocean and puts some of the air from his air canister into that ship. And if he makes enough trips, eventually that ship is going to start rising and come to the top. And that point there is what we call the break-even point. It's the point at which your business starts making profit because you've sold enough widgets, or you've had enough people come into your cafe buying coffee, that you have covered all those initial costs, or that year's contribution of all those startup costs. And now every bit of money that comes in is money in your pocket. And the thing that not many of us realize, and in this story, I can't remember what I called them, was it Sam and Sally? Sam and Sally didn't realize that for every time that they sell one of their cups, it's not that this diver goes down to the boat and injects oxygen or air in. He does something else. He needs to get down there, and so he ties weights to himself. He ties lead weights to himself. And when he gets to the bottom, he lets out some air, but he lets out some lead weights as well. Every time a customer comes into your cafe, They will consume something that costs you something, and they will leave some money that earns you something. And hopefully that money is more that will counterbalance that weight that is left in the boat. And so think about your idea now of your business. Will it stand this test? Because if by the end of the year there have not been enough trips down to the boat and the boat hasn't come to the top and broken even, you're in debt. And it's these costs here, it's those startup costs that are the big problem. Now, I was made redundant a few years ago, and I decided to give business a go, and I had one or two ideas. And it was interesting because I was completely the opposite to most of you, because you'll have a great business idea, and I had nothing. I'd squandered my best business ideas when I was in business before that, but that's another story, and not to be recommended. But I went into business and I had no particular idea. And the boss that I'd worked for, I did a deal with him. I said, whatever I earn, I'll give you some of it over, if I earn up to a certain amount this year, and then I start earning more, I'll give you 50% of it. And then he let me use the office and all the facilities. So I had no startup costs. But also I had no money. So I had no money to invest. There was nothing I could do. And you sat there probably, you're thinking, well, is this man crazy? How can he be stood up there giving us this lecture? You're probably all business students, and I'm sorry that this does sound a lot like a lecture, even though we're in the student union building. Where was I? We were talking about your business idea. And you're thinking, I wouldn't do business like that. I would have some money to invest. I had no money to invest. So I launched some little boats out. Not businesses, but products. These were all products that by themselves had the right combination of lead weight, because every product has its own weight, doesn't it? It costs us something per unit, and it also had some buoyancy, and some of those products sank to the bottom, and therefore I knew that they were a no-go. And some didn't. Some sold. And, you know, when you start in business, some of you may have done it, but the ones who put your hands up, you'll be having these kind of fears that I had. It's like the postman opening the gate into the large and wealthy estate, hearing the barking and the roaring and the snarling of the dog behind the gate, knowing that he's going to be torn probably limb from limb. And you know what I found? In that garden. Those barriers to entry to business were not there anymore. And this was 3 or 4 years ago, and those barriers weren't there anymore. Patents had become irrelevant, because I could move faster with my products than anyone else would need to spend time to talk to a patent attorney and get the patent sorted out and get it through the courts and etc., etc. I could already have had 2 years of sales, by which time I could move on to another product. It was irrelevant. I didn't need to take on any staff, because, as you know yourselves, there are now all these wonderful websites where people auction their labour, and for as little as a £5, you can get the cover made for an e-book, if that's what your product is. Or you can get someone to do some marketing, or write some copy, or create a website. You don't need to employ anybody. There needs to be no fear for any of us here creating products, as long as we let go of this idea that we must have a business. Now, there is a problem. Not many of my products that I started with made it to the end. And that's because in the middle of this bell curve, in the dark blue, 95% of all customer need is already met. Supermarkets, huge online stores and warehouses. And to take an example, if you want to create a fashion product or an item of clothing, all the usual sizes are covered, but there may be a niche, because as you can see on this chart, to the left, there are those sizes that are too small for supermarkets, for high street to bother with. And on the right, there are those sizes which are too big for anyone to bother with. And those markets are called niche markets, and I'd urge you to think about niche markets. Now, taking the example again of fashion, mainstream fashions, 95% of your customers will be catered for by the high street. But there will be those who, on the left niche or on the right-hand niche, are not being catered for. Now, I just want to show you something what I find interesting, and it's a way to visualize which products to look at, because there on the left, all those sizes are catered for, and there on the bottom, all those fashions are catered for. And in the middle, that dark square, is what the high street is catering for. Now, I don't know why they trust me with a laser, but there we go. And these areas here, that's the niche areas. So if you're somewhere with a bit of an out there fashion sense, and you're also a kind of 7 foot with a 30-inch waist, that this here is a niche. That there is a niche squared. And you'll notice that those people with some out there fashion sense, there are niche online shops that are covering all the usual sizes, and there are niche online shops that are covering all the mainstream fashions for either people who are too tall or people who are too small. But have you noticed that there is nothing in the niche corners? And I realized that that was the place where we ought to put our effort if we're going to come out with a great new product that we can sell online. Discouraging news is that 91.8%, or 91.9% if we're using this bell curve, of customer need is fulfilled. And the niche shops are taking up another large chunk. And if you're going to come out with niche products, there aren't many people left for you to bring out your product to. So again, should I get off the stage? Well, I just want to talk some big figures with you. We all love big figures. Here we go. 2,400... 2405318 Just call that number. Do you know who knows what that precise number is? Yeah? Oh, thank you. Fantastic. Who knows what it stands for? That's the number of people worldwide that are internet connected. Those are your customers, because you do not need to sell anymore to people who are in the UK. You do not anymore need to sell to people who can make it out to the high street. You can sell to anybody. And that niche section is still 464,000 people for every niche squared, for every niche within a niche that you might care to put a product into. And the niche market is huge. And if we talk about in terms of how much need there is for products, think about the geometry here. if you add together these 4 niche areas, those areas that nobody is putting products into, that's the same area, isn't it, as this? If we cut that up, it's exactly the same area. The products that are catered for by mainstream shops on the high street, there is as much need. I'm talking about quantity of products. For example, sizes of clothing. There is as much scope for niche products as there is for mainstream products. And there is twice as much for niche products. But everybody is selling in here. So I don't know why you're still sitting there, because you can buy yourself a 3D printer for £300, and in the 18 minutes that this talk took, you could have printed one product for somebody that really needed it, because if you'd have noticed, there's a hidden message here in this talk. Because products aren't about you. Who cares if you make some money? You're all bright people, you can get a job. Who cares if I make money? I'm just someone stood here lecturing you. What is a product? A product is a thing that meets a need. What's a good product? It's a thing that meets an acute need or desire. And these people here are getting nothing. There is nothing there for them. And it costs us nothing to produce a product that will meet their need. Why aren't we going out there and letting go of our ideas, our business ideas, and our designs, and putting them up there for free on the internet? There are people who never ever feel like they look good in a party. There are people who never ever can buy a pair of jeans. And that's the same with every single niche that there is. And we can do something about that. There's the opportunities. So I've got 1 minute left to give a call for action, but I think I've kind of said everything I need to. There are no more barriers for you to go and bring out products. Forget about businesses. Think about products. Try and bring out as many products as you can so that you can fulfill as many needs as possible. It might be an ebook you want to write. It might be paintings that you want to release for free on Twitter. It might be poetry that you've been sitting on all your life that no one's ever seen. Let's open our hands wide and give for these needs. Thank you.